Hello and welcome. My name is SinglePlayerCarl, and welcome to Season 2 of Once Human. Today we are going to be doing a build territory showcase of particularly my Barbie and Ken Mojo Doso Casa House on Beachfront Pavilion Prophecy, found here inside of level 48 Red Sands at 7529 at negative 1319. I am playing this inside of server PvE 01-0016, the physical server. And let us begin. Ultimately, we locked out in the server environment and have a lot of positive people with a lot of positive mindsets. And by doing so, we were able to work together to really think about how we wanted to go about doing things. And similar to how I chose to take my approach with Once Human in Season 1 on World 25, I wanted to do something similar while still being able to play with a more selfish mindset in mind, simply because of what I wanted provided. Inside of my Eternal Land, I actually experimented with a couple of building concepts that I did not use in my original build territory showcase, which will be linked in the description bar of the VOD cut of this video below. But without further ado, let us begin. The territory itself is a very simple territory to really replicate in concerns of the basic problems to work with. You're dealing with building towards the max facility and furniture cap to try and max out on everything that you want possible. It is possible to be able to get a +2. I simply, for the purposes of the guide, wanted to look with a 6 cap instead of an 8 cap to replicate the power concerns. It's not completely optimized, only because inside of Pollution I have not replaced the engines with deviation engines yet because I don't have the special plastic. I'm still working off of tier 3 equipment, but it simply showed what would be possible without having to specifically save scum to get to the maximum capacity of what would be possible for a player to do once they let down the baby gate and let us into phase 2. We're working with 692 structures, of which I believe the majority is stone foundations, walls, tri-ceiling stairs, small square ceilings, and a couple of pieces here and there for furnitures and facilities. A majority of our facilities, I originally thought that I had 128, but I actually had 125, but it must have been the ones that I deleted the corners. A majority of our capacity of facilities, when it comes to our tanks, we're not at max capacity for them. We have 18 water tanks, we have 2 water pumps, only because we are moving water in a consistent fashion where I'm not making use of a third countable refill on my water supply. We have 11 boxes, we have a couple of wall terminals, a couple of switches, obviously the grow lights for the greenhouse, which every base needs. Certainly you won't always have to do 125, you could probably get away with doing 90 boxes, as my last base did, so you can actually have some furniture and facilities for defense. You're getting electric furnaces, some of which are for smelting and saving resources on acid, others are for crafting and making anything that is going to be based on a timer, which is going to be your charcoal, your sintered blocks, and your glass, as well as only 4 automatic irrigation facilities because it's made in a ranch style on a single plane, and 4 compost bins, and then occasional decorative accessories, obviously the lights and radios and some models, as well as a simple bathtub and some cartons to manage between types. And currently right now, because I don't have the deviation inside, we're using biomass generators, which I'll probably move around to a different position once it's time to move the power supply. Easily producible, easily achievable for anybody moving from the mid-game of Tier 3 into Tier 5 before you replace it with your specializations of choices, whether you have a focus or not. There is also a Stardust water pump that has been organized in such a way that it basically works on a barrier to walk. I had a similar setup in the power supply as well. Let us begin by doing actually a simple walkthrough. So originally, in the first design, this entire plane out here in this zone was completely filled with boxes to simply be watered by the rain. I chose to use blueberries to start, simply for blueberry and orange soda. Oranges can be used, blueberries can be used, whichever one you can get your hands on first, alongside hawthorn juice you can get to have. I preferably suggest using blueberries because it's easier to find the blueberries inside of the beginner zones for consistency purposes. But if you can find more of one seed or another, especially if you are starting out for the first time and you don't have any seeds to transfer, you can completely be fine to do so. Here you actually have the first of many of the demonstrations for this base. I like to make use of false bottoms when it comes for storage purposes. So here we have the first of my designs, which is a 80 power supplies of water pumps. One of the water pumps is not getting enough power because since I'm not running full deviation and I don't have Sparksmith, I don't have the ability to have the +2 to add for the extra power supply that allows me to run it off of the main grid, but everything is modularized anyways. You're going to be running a standard 8 pump to 2 osmosis setup for the purposes of filtrating your water. As you can see here with the pump setup, based on what I have provided, if I can go find what's probably pulling the power, which is probably the water, not here, so it's going to be up there. As you're filtrating through the system, running the power, this is always going to be running on a continuous circuit. I always suggest that your water supply be running on this particular circuit for this particular fashion for the purposes of that upkeep. You're going to be at the mercy of what it's capable of doing. He just hearted the shit. It's going to be at the mercy of what it's capable of doing. So when you have your regimented power supply, I at least would suggest that for that power supply, you try to wire your water in such a way that you can try to limit what you are using. Hopefully that actually made it so that that can run, but probably didn't. I'm disoriented. Yes, it did actually. So when you're running your water in your system and you're trying to get your water to grow, always remember that that particular water that you happen to be running is running on a perpetual cycle, specifically to cycle in new water and cycle in the acid from the polluted zone while also cycling it out. You can make use of this open space because this is effectively my purification zone. As we go through the inside of the wall, you can see that I've chosen to make use of a 2 alcove system. You're going to have double walls protecting your Stardust Resonator with a inside way to get in and out to protect it from normal mobs just walking in and phasing in. You're going to build it away from the outside edge and try to build up the territory so you have 1 tile over for safety and expanse purposes. In terms of the walls that I built for the protection of the greenhouse, it's built on the border simply because I wanted to use as much efficient space as possible. I should have done this a different way because I actually should have built it in such a way that I was making use of this 3 tile excess here on the side, so it would have been 1 tile inside so that I could have had protection for these outside layers, because if anything breaks these foundations, I'm going to be in for a bad time rebuilding it. But since the purification is over here, the monsters are going to focus on this side instead, building it towards the ocean so they can only come from one side either over here or over here. You're going to build this with height so that you have the ability to walk across your facility and defend them as they come in. I have blockability so that when they go to the outside edge, this one is more manually created for manual protection, so that when you are defending it, you can be able to block things out. You do have a minimal amount of protections in the form of fire traps, and you can put down any kind of protections for sandbags or walls or what might have you for trying to keep them out of the territory as best as you can. Is still a couple of structure pieces that I could place to protect this particular piece, which I probably will put down as I'm speaking. But all in all, the open field of the open space of the base is so that you can have a lot more potential to protect what you are dealing with, so that you are less exposed to the elements, as it were. I'll actually make raised walls in this one to protect the inner walls here. Let me get up this light. There we go. The ability of making these outside walls protect the section are all going to be about the consistency to be able to keep them protected as best as you can to limit the amount of damage that your base is going to take over time. So simply working on that particular fashion for the build is going to be important. A lot of this happens to come with one of the first experimentations that I took. The first of which here, moving from the water supply, which I will check in a moment, but moving here is the ability to fulfill the specifications of what you need for your territory. When it comes to your functional facilities, you're obviously going to want to try and build up to your max capacity when it comes to your territory deviance. My specific purposes after they nerfed good old Pup Buddy from PvP and moved it to PvE, is to always try to have at least one Pup Buddy. If you want to be able to carry over each one and just move one in and then have one remaining inside of your Eternal Land, that is possible to do so. But I would always say bring a Pup Buddy with you from your past seasons for your carry weight, because Featherweight is way too fucking busted not to bring with you into every season. If you did not get one, you're gonna have to take one for the team and just play through PvP to get one. But regardless of whatever territory deviance that you choose to use, I wanted to experiment with a much lighter form of focusing. So I have a lethal bunny collecting meats for me on cooldown, while on the other end, where are you? I forgot where I put it. No, it's on the other side. I have a lethal bunny collecting for me. I have 2 Digbies trying to go through the area to collect the iron, copper, tin, and sulfur that they can, along with trying to skim out any gold and silver ore that happens to spawn in the fields, because I don't like looking for it manually. I'm also experimenting with Fetch-a-Lot bunnies to see if they can be able to fetch the thing that I want the most, which apparently happens to be picking up one of my free morale seeds. I also wanted to experiment with how I could best use false bottoms and false walls to be able to protect my equipment and my resources from being particularly hunted by players that could raid a base. I don't believe this is how the loot system works, but I wanted to experiment with the design to try and make something that was sleek and elegant and would ultimately protect my my structures from destruction. So moving back to that, here inside the power supply, as I mentioned, it is an 8:2 ratio between osmosis filter and water pumps. Out here, it will always scale upwards, but you're always going to have a free-floating amount of polluted water or seawater holding in your system. The starting ratio is going to start out 3-1, 3 seawater to 1 polluted water, but as you start building up the excess that will pull into the system, it'll start cycling the polluted water that is being pulled in from the osmosis that the system is filtering. So your ability to produce acid out here is going to be good no matter what you do. For protection purposes, we have a roof system to allow for access of better ramps, because I hate stairs. I think stairs are bad, but I think sloped walls and roofs are good for mobile access to the top. As we work inside the water supply, you can see that it is filtering in the seawater and will slowly build over time to start accessing this off. And then you have the sunken vault over here on the backside of the resonator. As we take a stroll over to look at it, you can see that I have 2 water tanks that are full of dirty water for when I need to make more boiled, and then an entire daisy chain of tanks moved in such a way to pump in the new water and move out the old water. So moving here to the front of the water tank, you can see that's nothing but pure, and then moving to this side of the water tank, you can see that there is some impure acid. It's only slowing down because it's building up in the back of the system. But here you can see that the water tank is properly moving the water through the pipes. You just saw one of the water pieces move over here. As this system works like this is designed to daisy chain it so that where you have buildup, you can be able to leave the system on perpetually, which is why I wire the water side directly to the system and then wire the power grid separately. This is best for those that want to micromanage and optimize the time, because we all know that you have different games to play and that you want to take your time really enjoying yourself rather than having to worry about the micromanaging. This is a design that can be replicated even on the basic level by new players. Obviously, disregard the buffs, assume that you wouldn't have these things, but you do have your disassembly vents for disassembling parts, fabrics, and plastics when trying to get extra yield, and you also do have the electric furnaces. You can go with a 2 setup or a 4 setup. The only reason I have a 4 setup is that the lower line is for smelting the copper, bronze, steel, aluminum, and tungstens, as well as the top for time consumption for reducing power consumption for crafting. So this entire top line here is only taking 5 power compared to 10 power that you'd usually take. You could get somebody with maximized furnaces to be able to load this out so that you can have the power drain buff alongside the dual crafting enhancing effects, but regardless of what you have for your power system, you could have 1-in-1, honestly. That's something that you could do to reduce your overhead. Eventually, inside of your base, you're going to get rid of your vending machine if you choose to put it on top of an Oldsmobile transfer system of your choice. Right now, simply because it's not in the power system supply, I will eventually put down synthesis benches. In this, I don't suggest having multiple synthesis to use for whatever you want, because you will take a look and see that inside of my mimetics here, I'm only at 7 out of 10, and I happen to have Master Craftsman, Careful Disassembly, Chef's Knife, Biomass, Solar, Water Pump, and Electric Furnace for efficiency. Regardless of what I get in the 45 to 50 tier, you do not need to have your acid gain be stapled by how much you're producing from your electric furnace or from sulfur. I would say sulfur chemist still beats out electric, only if you don't have the Stardust resource to burn, but I obviously have Stardust water, so that is less of a concern. You will obviously optimize these as the season continues through the phases, but this is purely focused on your first impression gain after you hit phase 2, maybe into phase 3. All of these things can easily be recreated by a normal player. None of the building technology here is difficult to do, because it plays the idea of raised gable ceilings and raised gable floors. Because the funny mechanic is, and still, hashtag I love farming but I hate farming, please make farming better. In this, you're going to be dealing with mass purposes. No matter what kind of base you run, you will have a farm. And farming is something that you want to try and optimize as best as you can. I've tried a 3-4 design. This time I decided to try a cross design. I think the cross design probably would work the best, just in terms of what could be done. I should probably test it here to see if this water's on the edge, but I don't think it will. I think this is going to give me the bug where it doesn't want to place properly, but we'll see. But you could experiment with the system to see if it fits to what you like, and if you can get better optimization from the opportunities. No, it wouldn't even work because it's not even covered by lighting, so that's out the way. But no matter what kind of system that you choose to put together, whether you choose to use this design that I have here, or the design that I put forward in my mass DV farm from the first guide video, you're going to need to have a farm. You just need to have one. You don't need to have one that is in excess of 100 plot tiles, simply if you want to have turrets for territory defense, which I probably will redesign it a little bit to provide myself extra should I want to have the turrets, which I'll probably have a minimal amount just to protect from one side or another. But in this farm, we do make use of compost bins because we are on the ocean, which means we do have access to shellfish and seaweed. You will be printing spoiled food, and you will be printing fertilizer with this. You will need it to produce for what you want. You're going to want to have a fridge for crop rotation, and you're going to want to set it up to be set and forget based on what you want to have to your optimization. For me, I would say the wiring mess here on the grow lights is a problem, but it gets the job done. The best thing that I worked for here is the optimization of what I chose to use with this build design. This is using a 4 water setup. The water and the light is optimized to the wall, so you can turn off the water independently, and you can turn off the lights independently. Obviously, the lights are going to be running all the time, simply for the purposes of keeping the light going, because it's indoors. But you can run the water in such a way where the water is not permanently on, simply because you're going to need to have enough power to supply it. I would say 120 power is enough for your grid to supply. Obviously, downstairs I have advanced biomass, so that's 25 times 6. You're going to want at least 2 deviations if you can, because if you're not selling in pollution, you're really gimping yourself on your power population. But regardless of whether or not you get somebody to build you +2 or to give you optimization for your energy, you're going to be at the mercy of whatever you choose to provide. The hardest part is the building of this. This design makes use of a half-raised gable and of a half-roof raised gable. You could build this with whatever you want. I would suggest premium wood as the top piece, only because the top layer gives you the ability to have ridges. Wood does the same with the slats to be able to show where you want to place things on alignment. This is a 32 designed farm. Some of the pieces and parts had to be removed to put down the necessary supporting foundations for this, because the building rules will require that if you do not have these pillars. You technically could get away with having this be just one pillar supporting this, because you need to have the one pillar supporting the center wood square, because it's moving across the 3 square rule on building for support, because without it, the roof would be open to the sky. You could do that if you wanted to. I chose not to. Technically, I should be replacing these small woodens with stone. But regardless of what you choose to put inside the design, you're going to be building it similarly across the entire farm. You're going to be placing them equidistant to the center platform, and you're going to have it on the raised gable where it's 4 ticks removed from the side. So if you look here, this is 4 ticks. The way that I know it's 4 ticks is that I actually measured it, placing it all the way up against it as it would be on the half division of the grid. Also, thank you for finally adding your grid system. The simple way you do it is that you would just move over 1, 2, 3, 4 ticks, and then you would place a full box scale around it. To get the gable off the floor here, even if you don't use small foundations. I had a problem with small foundations. It didn't want to place cleanly, so I simply went off the corner of a stone foundation, placed 2 sidewalls, place a square ceiling on top, place the irrigation facility in the direct center. This makes it so that instead of using the box inlay design, where you lace the irrigation facility in between the boxes, this allows you to have perfect alignment for snapping. So you will get equal coverage of water. This is actually out of position, I just noticed. You will get perfect positioning of water around the entire plane so that you can keep everything consistent. This allows you to increase your max yield and get more boxes out. You could reduce the amount of boxes to increase the amount of facilities that you actually have. It is all up to you and what you choose to do and what you believe is possible. I believe in having max harvesting, so that's what I choose to go with. With a quick word on contaminated features, keep in mind that even on this section, I actually have 2 front parts that I can make specialized for contaminated. I think contaminated is not going to be worth it, but remember that it requires 40 light and a higher amount of water, almost near in excess of 80 and 90. In terms of this farm, as you saw in this fridge, it prints. I could get a lot more if I did an entire mass across it. I am farming Scarlet Camelot to try to get the seed resource up as I'm doing it, but everything in this design can easily be repeated by a new beginner player. The first design was made for players that are just experimenting and learning the building rules. This one is more targeted towards those players that are looking for a much more optimized build that provides them with clean necessities. Eventually, the only way to upscale this is you would replace all of your 32 boxes with custom 64 boxes and remove some superfluous walls to try and add in more spaces you want. Maybe remove the corner box pieces and give up the additional feed to give yourself turrets, and then optimize that power supply as well to give yourself more damage to work with dealing with purifications. But everything in the side of this is completely optimized, automated, and will be protected no matter what you choose to do. And then this open field space gives you room to build whatever you want, and to work on whatever you want to have. So in that regard, your ability to use the facilities will definitely be based on what you want. You could even choose to use Priapets as a gate feature versus using facility functions, since the defense walls, the defense sandbags, are considered a facility. You're gonna want to use those over using anything else, and then eventually over time you're gonna upgrade these with wooden parapets to stone parapets. Everything here, along with whatever you want to have, is pretty much optimized and can be modular to your design. Build it up how you want, build it down how you want. Whatever you want, whatever you dream, is the fucking limit. If you have any comments, questions, and concerns about the guide, please let me know here. Again, my name is SinglePlayerCarl. If you enjoyed this guide, please consider dropping a like, a sub, a follow on whatever platforms you want to support on, whether that be Twitch, Ko-fi, Subscribestar, or YouTube. I hope this guide finds you well. I hope it gives you what you need, and I hope you hit your goals for the Season 2 for One Seaman. Again, my name is Carl. I sell Carl and Carl-based accessories, and I will see you guys next time. Feel free to rant me in the comments.